Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's show is pre-recorded and is called It's Time for Us to Reclaim Our Past. Thanks as always to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, and on audio and teleprompter we've got Lolita Ratchford. We've been talking about how the banking cartel has been lying to us about history. Our understanding of history is completely wrong. As we discussed last week, the members in the coalition that was predicted by the National War College, the Coalition for the Rule of Law, are working together to reconstruct our past. One of the members of this coalition is the United States minus the unconstitutional Federal Reserve Bank. I consult with this coalition whenever I prepare these segments for DCTV. Moscow State University has a website with a new discipline that combines mathematics and history. This website reveals that the corruption in the international financial sector has been falsifying ancient history for centuries. I would also like to remind you when an agent of the banking cartel sent me a very interesting piece of information about how the oldest pyramid can be dated to nearly 10,000 years BC. Here are the details. It was Bank Carlson who sent me that. In preparing this segment, I looked at an old segment on DCTV that we broadcast on the 25th of May 2016. We've been talking about the Phoenicians recently and how these explorers found the American continent many years before Christopher Columbus set sail. There's another member of the Coalition for the Rule of Law that wanted me to mention them today. They sometimes remind me of important things I've forgotten by hacking into my computer. As I was writing the teleprompter early in the morning on the 6th of March, which is the day that this segment was to be pre-taped, a 3-year-old tweet on the same subject popped up on my computer screen. It was sent out in 2015 by for Stephen Breyer's book signing. And I don't know what to call this member of the Coalition for Rule of Law. For now, I'll call them my intuition. If you have any other suggestions for what to call them, please let me know. It was on the 20th of November 2015. There's been considerable progress in ending the corruption in the international financial system during the past 2 years since a correspondence with the then chair of the U.S. Joint Chief of Staff, Martin Dempsey, and with an HSBC officer who said he was representing the Queen Elizabeth. The Coalition for the Rule of Law consists of the BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the G77, that's 134 developing countries, and the United States minus the Federal Reserve. And they are all acting through the Board of Governors of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. This coalition has placed the network of global corporate control identified by Vitaly Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich into receivership in the Global Debt Facility. And there's an inventory of assets, which I've listed in the teleprompter. And there's a certificate of the safekeeping of these assets attached to the tweet. And this coalition agreed on the global currency reset to replace fractional reserve fiat currency for currency out of the world's monetary gold reserves in the Global Debt Facility. The coalition placed commercial liens on Allied Barton, who are the security guards at the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, as well as liens on the personal assets of the agents of the network of global corporate control that had been holding up the global currency reset. These liens went into default and they were duly recorded. The coalition laid bare, that means disclosed, the false reality of the network of global corporate control. There are ongoing amnesty discussions with the beneficiaries of the global debt facility who are being harmed by the stubborn agents of the network of global corporate control. And there are discussions with agents of the network of global corporate control so that the global currency reset can proceed before there's permanent gold backwardation. That means gold goes into hiding. And that will establish another dark ages and choke off international trade and create mass starvation and pestilence. Amnesty is offered, provided the global currency reset can be implemented. I just want to make a point about the certificate of safekeeping at the end of the 2015 tweet. It referred to Tiburcio Villamor Marcos. I made it clear that TVM has not been authenticated by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. This is a requirement under the treaty, the Bilateral Minefield Breakthrough Successor Agreement. The Banking Cartel tried unsuccessfully through Tiburcio Villamor Marcos to steal the assets in the global debt facility. This didn't work. I prepared a preliminary list of the assets in the global debt facility. This is a working paper that's going to be properly inventoried. And one other point, I know how not to follow the banking cartel. I want to discuss the email I wrote to Bank Carlson on the 7th of July, which I also read to you in a DCTV segment about who is in control of the United States military. You can find my email to Bengt in the teleprompter. Bengt sent me a very interesting piece of information about how the oldest pyramid can be dated to nearly 10,000 years BC, and the details are also in the teleprompter. I discuss information that Bengt sends it to me with other people when I'm not able to figure it out on my own. Sometimes I ignore Bengt, and I've also had to tell Bengt when he's wrong. The banking cartel has been trying to hide its true role in our past. We've been deliberately lied to. The Phoenicians were precursors to the network of global corporate control, and they've been trying to hide from us. There are many buried cities off of our coasts. The ancient civilization that the banking cartel is trying to hide from us formed part of the Atlantis trading empire that spanned the globe from 4000 BC until its capital was buried underwater in 1500. And there's a teleprompter to the old segment in the DCTV series on the network of global corporate control, and you'll see that link in the teleprompter. Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. That's something that Edmund Burke said. It's time for us to reclaim our past. The banking cartel's version of history is false. The Phoenician coin, which was presumed to contain a map of the ancient world, this was discovered by Professor Mark McMahon, and this is correct. Neither Columbus nor the Vikings were the first non-natives to set foot on the Americas. McMahon, the Mount Holyoke geologist who last year led an expedition that discovered the oldest animal fossil found to date, he may have made another discovery, one that sheds radical new light on present conceptions of the classical world and on the discovery of the New World. Working with computer-enhanced images of gold coins minted in the Phoenician city in North Africa of Carthage between 350 and 320 BC, and you should see a sketch of a coin and where the world map it's inscribed. McMahon has interpreted a series of designs appearing on these coins, and their meaning has long puzzled scholars. McManaman believes the designs represent a map of the ancient world, including the area surrounding the Mediterranean Sea and the landmass representing the Americas. If this is true, these coins not only represent the oldest maps found to date, but they would also indicate that Carthaginian explorers had sailed to the New World. In fact, it was his interest in the Carthaginians as explorers that led McManaman to study the coins. The Carthaginians were closely linked to the Phoenicians of the Middle East in terms of origin, culture, language, and naval enterprise. Both peoples are widely credited with significant sailing exploits through the Mediterranean to the British Isles and along the coast of Africa. And you can see the detail of a gold coin, which shows what McManaman believes is a map of the Mediterranean area, surrounded by Europe, Britain, Africa, and at left, the Americas. The image appears on coins minted in Carthage between 350 and 320 BC. The enhanced and colorized version is based on the illustrations courtesy of Mark McManaman. In one of the coins studied by McManaman, a horse stands atop a number of symbols at the bottom of the coin. For many years, scholars interpreted these symbols as letters in Phoenician script. When that theory was discounted in the 1960s, it left scholars baffled. Working over the past months, McManaman was able to interpret the design as a representation of the Mediterranean, surrounded by the land masses of Europe and Africa, with, to the upper left, the British Isles. To the far left of the representation of the Mediterranean is what the geologist believes is a depiction of the Americas. A number of classical texts bolster this theory. For example, in the 1st century BC, Diodorus of Sicily wrote, "In the deep off Africa is an island of considerable size. Much of it is mountainous. Through it flow navigable rivers. The Phoenicians had discovered it by accident after having planted many colonies throughout Africa." And McManaman said, "I was just the lucky person who had the geologic and geographic expertise to view these coins in a new light." McManaman notes, "I've been interested in the Carthaginians as the greatest explorers in the history of the world." McManaman's interest in Carthage led him to master the Phoenician language. He's published 2 pamphlets on his work regarding the Carthaginian coins. One is written in ancient Phoenician, and this represents the first new work in that language in 1,500 years. He's submitted a paper on his theory to the Numismatist, which is a leading journal in the study of coins, and this accepted McManaman's paper on the theory for publication. At the same time, the scholar is trying to gain access to a number of coins or casts of their impressions, currently held in European collections. These impressions will further aid him, he hopes, in proving the world map's theory is valid. "If I had the time and the money," McManaman observes, only half kidding, "I'd be in North Africa with my metal detector trying to find Carthaginian coins to further confirm my hypothesis. Additional study may well reveal that it was Punic explorers, not Europeans, who discovered the New World." At the very least, McManaman hopes his theory will focus new scholarly attention on ancient Carthaginian culture. Before I fill in some missing history about the banking cartel's past, I'm going to tell you briefly why this matters. I'm also going to tell you how to prepare yourself financially for the transition period during the global currency reset. Finally, I'm going to talk about my role during the global currency reset. Why the banking cartel's past matters. As Edmund Burke said, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. People need to realize that their understanding of reality has more to do with propaganda from the banking cartel and less to do with what is actually going on. This understanding depends on a clear view of who the banking cartel is and where it's come from. Before the corruption in the world's money can end, there has to be a clear vision what the corruption consists of and how it's maintained. How to prepare yourself financially. There's going to be a transition period. The changes are going to be profound as the world's corrupt governments and money are all replaced. The actual measures are going to be decided as local villages and towns clear out the corruption from the grassroots up. The fight to clear the corruption in our money system is ongoing, and the Coalition for the Rule of Law is more than 90% likely to win, based on the National War College Power Transition Model. The timing for the exchange of the banking cartel's fake paper currency for the world's monetary gold reserves in the global debt facility, it's not yet decided. The decision for the global currency reset and winding down of the banking cartel has been taken, and it's reflected in the minutes of meetings of the Board of Governors and Development Committee of the World Bank and IMF. Many people want to know when the currencies are going to be exchanged. The decisions to introduce local currencies will be taken by local businesses. I've mentioned the analogy of the Nantucket sleigh ride, as we in the Coalition for the Rule of Law throw harpoons into the banking cartel whale. The banking cartel's propaganda machine in the mainstream and alternative media is responsible for what many people think of as the news. To prepare yourself financially, it's wise to ignore all the media, as this will distract you from reality. As insurance, you may want to purchase precious metals and gemstones to use these as currency. They can be broken down in small amounts using Aurum. The role of the overseer mandate trustee during the global currency reset. There are pictures showing a switchboard operator, a ringmaster, a canary in the coal mine, and a tango dancer. They all represent aspects of what the overseer mandate trustee of the global debt facility does. The formal aspects of the job are illustrated by a drawing of M1 as I follow the role of the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF in authenticating withdrawals from the global debt facility. And this trust that Jose Rizal and Ferdinand Marcos wrote into paragraph 6 of the bilateral Minesfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement. I'm working together with decentralized humanity. As we get ourselves decentralized and fight the corruption, we can revisit the decisions that were taken early on. In the beginning, the global currency reset will consist almost entirely of the simple exchange of currencies to cut off income to the banking cartel. Sequencing is going to be very important as we decentralize. That's to keep from falling into the divide and conquer trap that's kept humanity enslaved by the banking cartel. I'm not a classical scholar, and the rest of this segment is based on a website. I've also drawn from sources mentioned in my tweet last week. One of them is by Suhail J-Boat. There were many indications that the ancient Phoenician mariners reached the east coast of North America thousands of years ago. They may have erected their own stone monument to mirror and align with stone circles in their eastern Mediterranean homeland. And you can see in the teleprompter exactly where that is. The ports of Carthage, seen from the north. Carthage was founded as a Phoenician colony near modern Tunis. After the fall of its mother city, Tyre, in 585, Carthage became the leader of the Phoenician colonies in the west and founded an informal but powerful empire, which is known for its almost perennial struggle against the Greeks of Sicily and the Romans. In the First Punic War, that was between 264 and 241, the greatest war in antiquity, the Carthaginians lost Sicily to the Romans, and although their general Hannibal Barca tried to reverse the situation in the Second Punic War, the decline had already started. The Romans sacked Carthage in 240 after a Third Punic War, and they refounded the city, which again became prosperous. According to the Greek historian Timaeus of Tauromenion, Carthage was founded in 814 or 813. Another author, Justin, suggested 825. For some time, these dates seemed to be contradicted by the results of excavations, which all suggested that the oldest finds were younger. However, in the late 1990s, it became clear that although the archaeologists had done their job well, their method of dating had been wrong. Essentially, all dates were derived from pottery, the sequence of which was based on the ceramics known from Sicily, where we have Thucydides' list of dated city foundations. Although it was widely recognized that these dates were problematic, it was the best way to proceed. In the 1990s, however, radiocarbon dating was for the first time applied to the early Iron Age of Carthage, and the oldest finds in Carthage can now be dated to the last quarter of the 9th century. An ivory sphinx from Carthage was made in Phoenicia. There's a nice picture of that. And the first settlers were people from Tyre in Phoenicia. According to legend, their leader was a princess named Alyssa, who was forced to flee from Tyre after her brother, King Pygmalion, had killed her husband. After founding Carthage, she committed suicide to prevent a war against the native population. The story may contain some reliable information, although it's more likely that the founders of Carthage were merchants and farmers, not refugees. On the other hand, the idea that the powerful city was founded by a woman is too unusual to be a mere invention. However, this may be the settlers founded the city on a marvelous place where it controlled trade between the eastern and western parts of the Mediterranean and had access to good agricultural resources. It seems that the colony was first ruled by a governor sent from Tyre, but the settlement became a city, the citizens wanted some independence, and kings started to be rulers of Carthage. In the course of the 6th century, they were replaced by 2 annually elected supreme magistrates, the suffetes. They're called judges. The Roman consulship, which is better known to us, was modeled on this office, and there's a map of Carthage. Meanwhile, the city was becoming an important trade center. Probably in the first half of the 6th century, the Carthaginian admiral Hanno founded several colonies along the coast of what's now Morocco and proceeded to the Gold River, Senegal, and even reached Mount Cameroon. Another explorer was Himilco, who reached the British Isles. There must have been other expeditions which are not documented in our sources. In about 575, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar captured Tyre, which now lost its independence, and was no longer able to send reinforcements to Phoenician colonies if they needed them. The settlers had to look elsewhere if they needed help, and Carthage became the leader of a more or less informal empire based on a shared ethnic settlement and commercial interests. It consisted of many cities, all situated on the coast. In the east and northeast, it bordered on the Greek possessions in the Cyrenaica and on Sicily. In the north, Carthage controlled the coasts of Sardinia and Corsica, and in the west, the ports of the Maghreb and Andalusia. It also controlled the gold trade from Senegal and the route to the mysterious Tin Isles, which may have been everywhere along the Atlantic coast. And there's a picture of a Punic mask and a woman's mask, Demeter or Medusa, and an incense burner and the head of a bearded man, the origins of empire, Tanit on a Carthaginian coin. No doubt the Carthaginian towns often had to fight against people in the hinterland. We might like to read more about, say, the Iberian Wars, but unfortunately the ancient inhabitants of Hispania didn't leave many written accounts, nor did the Carthaginians. The only place where we can see their imperialism at work is on Sicily, where the Greeks and Carthaginians seem to have been in an almost perennial war. We know that in the mid-6th century, Carthage supported the Phoenician towns against Greek Salinius, that they fought against the Spartan prince Dorius, who tried to build a city within the Carthaginian port of the island around 510, that in 480 the Carthaginian leader Hamilcar was defeated near Himera by Gelon, the Syracusan tyrant, that a commander named Hannibal renewed the war at the end of the 5th century and organized the Sicilian towns into one province, that a treaty was signed in 405, and that war flared up every now and then during the 4th century. We know of fighting in the years 397 to 392, 382 to 373, 368 to 362, all against Dionysius, and in 345 to 339 against Timoleon, and in 311 to 306 against Agathocles. We're all working together in the global currency reset. Today, we're working together in figuring out the history of the banking cartel, also known as the network of global corporate control. In my role as overseer mandate trustee, I work together with Decentralized Humanity. As we get ourselves decentralized and fight the corruption in our money, we can revisit the decisions that were taken early on. In the beginning, the global currency reset will consist almost entirely of the simple exchange of currencies to cut off income to the banking cartel.